If you were writing the book about William Nylander's contract negotiation, what would the final chapter read like?
Oh, boy. That is a good one, and don't have the answer to the question. You know, it's funny. A week ago, there was dialogue. There was momentum.
Biggest week in the negotiation.
But having said that, we identified last week, as we thought it would be an important week, that it was either going to get done then or it's going to be a grind. And obviously it's going to be a grind. And the sense I get, even though neither side's really talking, is that there's a lot of frustration, a lot of tension, that that the one side doesn't see it the other side's way and vice versa. And so then the next question is, what about trade? Well, if they can't get him signed, what about a trade? And I firmly believe the Leafs' position is somewhat unchanged. That is, their primary focus is to get him signed. That's what they want to do. But I also know this. With each passing day that it's not done, and the stalemate becomes that much more apparent, there's going to be an uptick in the number of, and I think there has been an uptick in the number of calls they're getting from other teams asking, hey, what are you doing? And for the most part, I think the message to the teams that have called have been not even considering it. That was a few weeks ago. I'm starting to wonder if maybe they're like, okay, well, we don't plan on trading him, but what do you got in mind? What might thing? But having said all that, and Pierre LeBrun reported on Insider Trading tonight, his understanding that the Carolina Hurricanes, who are probably, I would say, as interested, if not more interested, than any team in the National Hockey League in William Nylander, have not been fully invited to engage in terms of horse trading. We'll give you this guy for that guy and do this and do that. That it hasn't got down to the brass tacks of negotiating a trade, but there's a bunch of teams that are kind of hanging there waiting for Kyle Dubas or Brandon Pridham or Lawrence Gilman to say to them, okay, yeah, you know what, let's talk about this. And maybe they start to do a two-track thing where try to negotiate on one track and maybe listen to offers and contemplate their trade options on the other, because, I mean, we're getting down to the final month here.
What is... compared to Taylor Hall, and I mean, everyone thinks that's ludicrous what they fetch for that, and of course he wins the Hart Trophy, and obviously after that, any Edmonton Oiler fan would say, why did you trade that? But if you are going to move a guy like Nylander, has times changed where it's like you're not getting an Adam Larson type defenseman, or it's got to be an improvement on that, doesn't it?
Yeah, you want to, if you're the Leafs and you're trading a young guy coming out of entry level, you want to trade for a similar piece. And obviously, in the Leafs case, you'll be much more likely to want a defenseman than a forward. I don't think you limit yourself to that, depending on the team you're talking to. But I mean, if you're talking the Carolina Hurricanes, you're all over Slavin or Pesce, and people have mentioned Faulk, but I'm not sure the age factor. They want younger guys, I think, that are. And the other thing about the Carolina defense is those guys are all locked up on long-term deals. So there's a cost certainty element.
Jesus, how old is Faulk? Isn't he like 20?
I think he's 27.
Yeah,
he's not.
I love how that's referred to as just a dinosaur.
Well, yeah, but it's only because you've got Matthews, Marner, Nylander. You want guys that are going to come up at the same, roughly. And again, it varies because Slavin and Pesce are not 18 or 19 years old. But Pierre LeBrun brought up a good point, though, is the Carolina Hurricanes, they're not famous for going crazy with here's a 7-year deal for $8 million a year or $7 million a year. Now they do have their guys they do have a lot of guys, like we mentioned, the defensemen under term for reasonable money. They're in the fives though. So you could well ask the question. Yeah, it's great that Carolina's interested. It's great that everybody's starting to come up with their trade scenarios for Carolina-Toronto deals. What would make the Carolina Hurricanes think that they could bang out a contract that William Nylander thinks is peachy, especially when they're in the midst of going through the same exercise with Sebastian Aho, who's already on their team? Because you know damn well that if they cough up a big number on Nylander to get the deal done, Aho's going to be like, oh, new guy's getting that.
Yeah.
Guy that's never played for this organization. I always love that. Guy never plays a game for the organization.
Yeah, that's how players think, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. It goes so far back, but Remember Eric Lindros signed the deal and hadn't played an NHL game?
Yeah.
And Gretzky and Lemieux are going, hold on a second here. This guy's making 3 sheets.
What about Daigle?
Yeah,
The
that's what
bagel.
I mean. That's really what started all the mountain of salary disclosure. But it on a lesser term, it kind of looks like that. My biggest concern, and this is only if, I wholeheartedly believe the Leafs will get it done with Nylander and he'll be with them. But if they decide to head down the trade route, if it's for a defenseman, I don't know people dive deep enough into the value of that defenseman. They just look at points. That's the biggest
You're
concern.
talking about the reaction from
From the fan base and people like that are just casual fans looking at it, because Adam Larson, when they made won a couple playoff rounds and looked good, he looked really good, and Taylor was injured and didn't. But when you start looking at
It's not
what Nylander could potentially do and get 60 points or 70 points, and you get a 25 or let's say a 40-point
stay-at-home
defenseman that helps shape your team. It's the narrative is still that the player is always going to win in everyone's eyes. The forward, I mean.
Right. But I mean, that's where different defensemen have different values, and
Right.
if the defenseman you feel like is discounted from what Nylander's worth, then you have to have something to top it up. Maybe that's a younger forward that helps give you some more depth.
So it wasn't last week that was the biggest week in this negotiation.
No, it was last week.
Because you went over to Switzerland.
Because now it's see they had the big push and it didn't happen. So I thought the week before, 2 weeks ago, he went to Switzerland. Dubas went to Switzerland. Then a week ago Sunday, he went and met Louis Gross. And then he did the Kyle Dubas World Tour around the various rinks and what have you. But there was more dialogue over the course of the week. So that was the week I thought, a week after the Switzerland trip and after the conversations with Gross, I thought, if you're getting it done in short order, it's happening this week. And it didn't happen. So now what that tells me is it's quite possible this thing's going to go down to the wire. It's just a guess. Because it can always change. Somebody could get frustrated and with one phone call say, okay, what the hell, give us that number.
Do you think the kid's committed to sitting out, like saying, I'm going to the KHL?
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine because it's the most absurd strategy if ever, because the clock doesn't tick for him. He can
leverage.
He can go to the KHL for the year and make whatever money he's going to make, and then he comes back next year and says, okay, here we go. I guess I got salary arb now. No, you don't. Okay, well, I guess I'm a year older. And no, so wait a second. So all the stuff, all the rights I didn't have last year, I still don't have them. Time has stood still for me, even though I've lost a year. And
see, for me, I mean, I don't want to see that happen with Nylander. I can't imagine the Leafs want that to happen. I would picture in that scenario, unless they get a great trade offer, then you trade whoever you have. I mean, if you get a trade where you're like, of course I'm going to make that deal, regardless if he's on term or not, you make the deal.
Right.
But I would think they wake up November 30th and say, listen, if we have to, here's a 1-year deal at $3 million. Why would Nylander not take that?
Kick the can down the road.
Kick the can down the road. But see, you talk about narrative and perception. I'm more concerned at what this is going to say within the organization, because Dubas was talking a big game on July 2nd. Like after he signed Tavares, and there were a lot of people that were like, wow, great deal, awesome deal, but where's the money for these other guys? And he came out and he said, we will sign them. It's going to happen. I have no doubt. I'm not worried about it. Yeah. Then the first guy that's up, you got to trade him because you can't get a deal done?
Yeah.
What would that say about Kyle Dubas?
Well, it says two things. Number one, that he couldn't get a deal done. And number two, though, what does it say about William Nylander? Because I think the premise, when Kyle Dubas says on July 2nd, we'll get everybody signed, I think the Leaf organization goes into it with the premise that at the end of the day, we understand business has to be done. And we understand that Nylander and Marner and Matthews all have their individual situations where they feel they have to protect themselves, get security, take care of business, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the basic premise is these guys really, really, really want to be here. They want to be together. They want to do something special together. This is going to be a group that grows old together and contends for cups together. And what could become apparent if we get to November 30th and he's still not signed, and they feel like, hey, we've given market value offers, we've given you the Pasternak offer or whatever the case may be, and you still don't want to do it. Well, then I guess maybe you don't want that. That
effectively
would be
a trade request in a way.
Yeah,
almost.
Yeah.
I'm not taking it, so.
And that would be that. That would be the. Well, we made a mistake thinking the player wants to be here, and you just. But hey, listen, that's Nylander's entitled to do exactly what he's doing, and it's not an ideal circumstance for the Leafs, and it's certainly not an ideal circumstance for him. And we'll see how it plays out. And listen, 3 weeks from now, he might have a deal done. He might be back playing, scoring some goals, and this stuff gets forgotten in a heartbeat. Or, you don't know. You get a deal done, you come back, you don't play well, and the fans are like,
well, and I said
took all that time to get a deal done, and now you're not shooting the lights out. Come on,
you're not
buddy.
ready to play.
And you start to lose a little something. But, it's business, man.